In the world of personal computer central processing units, or CPUs, there are two major companies in this space. There's Intel and AMD. Both companies make processors that are compatible with each other, but there are some subtle differences between the two organizations. Many people consider AMD an organization that makes CPUs that are compatible with Intel, but tend to be at a lower price point. So if you're putting together a system and you're trying to get the lowest price possible, you might want to consider AMD CPUs. The physical size of the processors made by Intel or AMD tend to be relatively similar to each other, but the connectivity that you would have on your motherboard is very different depending on the CPU that you're using. So if you're planning to use an AMD CPU, you'll need a motherboard that has an AMD socket. If you're planning to use an Intel CPU, then you'll need a different motherboard that has an Intel socket. Traditionally, we've looked at these two companies as AMD as the low-cost leader and Intel as the highest performing processor. This is a very generalized description of these two organizations. And if you're putting together a computer, you may find that Intel has a better priced processor and AMD has a better performance processor. These two companies are in competition with each other, and we tend to see these specifications switch from one manufacturer to another manufacturer quite often. Whether you're using an Intel or an AMD CPU, the process of installing the CPU is relatively straightforward. Most processor slots don't require any type of force to be able to install the processor. You simply place the CPU on top of the socket and then close the cover and lock it down with the handle that's provided. You don't have to force the CPU or add any additional pressure to install the CPU into its socket. We're used to having a single processor in our laptops, our desktops, and other devices that we would use as workstations. But if you have a server, there may be a need to have additional processing power. And for that reason, you'll find many servers are multi-socket. This means there are separate physical CPUs that can be installed on the same motherboard. You'll also notice that many server motherboards also support multiple memory module slots. So at least 4 slots and sometimes even more are available to maximize the amount of RAM that you can install on that single system. Server motherboards also generally support multiple expansion slots so that you can customize the server for any particular use. And if you're installing a server motherboard, you'll notice that they are designed to fit into a 19-inch rack and therefore tend to use the full-size ATX motherboard. Here's a good example of a server motherboard. You can see that there are 6 separate memory slots. You have plenty of slots available for additional expansion, and this particular motherboard supports 2 separate physical CPUs. If you need a server with plenty of CPU processing and lots of memory, then you might want to consider a motherboard that is specifically designed for a server.